Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Let me tell you, we have a new star. A star is born, Elon.
Pumped up on Mars, juice, and ketamine.
He is the Thomas Edison plus of our age.
Probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy.
I would say 98% really appreciate what he does, but those 2% that are nasty, they are out there in full force.
We are meant for great things in the United States of America, and Elon reminds us of that.
I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, July 15th. I'm Max Chafkin, in for David Papadopoulos. Later this episode, we have the first of a series of interviews that we're going to run this summer with some of our favorite reporters who cover Elon who do not work at Bloomberg. These are people who wrote stories that we read, over the last 6 months or so and thought, oh, I wish I had written that. And for the first one, we've got an interview that Kurt Wagner did with New York Times reporter Teddy Schleifer. Teddy covers money in politics, billionaires in politics. He was really all over this kind of moment in December and January when Trump and Musk were coming together, and the conversation is great. But before we get to that, Kurt is here with me now. We're going to have a quick conversation about some of the news that happened this week. Kurt, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Max. Thanks for having me.
And Elon Inc. stalwart Dana Hull is here as well. Dana, how are you?
I'm great.
All right. So the big news, as far as I can tell, since we last potted, is XAI. A bunch of stuff has happened with XAI. This is Elon Musk's AI chatbot company. It also owns X. And I'm just going to run through some of the hits. First of all, Elon did a demo for something called Grok 4. This is the latest Grok. He said it was going to be so smart.
I would expect Grok to, literally discover new technologies that are actually useful no later than next year and maybe end of this year. And it might discover new physics next year.
I guess better than relativity or string theory or whatever. Also, the same Grok seems to have gone a little Nazi. And also, in addition to physics, we have this other sort of seemingly unrelated product that Elon Musk also debuted, also having to do with Grok. I'm just going to play a little clip for both of you.
Golden light was zapping to this lively zoo at sunrise. Golden light hitting the enclosures, parrots chattering like they're gossiping, and a lazy tiger stretching in the morning glow. I'm rocking my black dress, ponytails bouncing as I pull you toward them.
All right, I think that's enough.
I feel like we're going to get a call from HR any second now. What's going on here?
It's like, Kurt, what is going on here?
Is that the companion?
This is the companion, Dana, yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah, Elon did tease this, Grok companion. You just heard the companion's voice. It's an anime, I suppose, or cartoon woman in a, revealing black dress. And I think the title or the name of the product sort of says it all. This is meant to be an emotional companion to people. And to your point, Max, slightly different direction, right? On the one hand, it's XAI worth hundreds of billions of dollars and going to change the world of physics. And on the other hand, building a sort of an emotional support girlfriend for people online, I guess. And so I don't know how popular this will be or how much of a core use case this will be, but it clearly taps into the wants and desires of a certain audience on X, and Elon seems quite excited about it. He was tweeting about it. When was this? Just yesterday.
Lots of tweets and responses to tweets of this character in various sexualized situations. Also, I guess there's also an animal one that's it's like a fox that's mean to you. I'm not totally sure what that's about. Dana, do you think this is a serious product? Or is Elon just cracking dirty jokes? I mean, I feel like I have to say he also spent basically half of yesterday, as we're recording this on Tuesday, tweeting about this girlfriend. The other half was tweeting about the newly expanded area that the robotaxi travels. This is Tesla's, AI product, and that is shaped like a penis. Or it's more than a penis now that I think about it. But in any case, it is a explicit shape. He seemed to be very amused with himself there. Is this just a bit? What is happening?
I mean, I think the way to think about Elon is that fundamentally he has like the emotional maturity of like a 13-year-old boy. And I say this as like the parent of a son. So, no disrespect to men out there, but like he's juvenile in his emotions, in his like view of the world. I mean, he's an incredible industrialist and he's, hyper aggressive and he's a financial engineer and all these things and all the great things about him that people already know. But like fundamentally, like from a psychological perspective, like he's just very juvenile. And so, yeah, he does these things to amuse himself. And then you look at the photographs of the coders at XAI that are on LinkedIn or wherever, and it's like young dudes grinding all night, like to ship this thing. And I'm sure that they're very proud of it. And how popular it will be, I don't know. But like, I mean, I think there is this like loneliness factor in his life and in like the culture as a whole that this could fill. And a lot of times, I mean, Optimus, the robot that Tesla is making, they talk about that as being a companion. Like Optimus
it's gonna be
can
your friend.
babysit your kids. It's going to be your friend. And so this whole kind of merging of machine and human and filling this void that I guess a lot of people have in their lives. I mean, I find it very sad personally, but I do think that like online culture is awash with lonely people falling in love with ChatGPT and whatever. Like, I mean, I think that there is like a niche for this, for sure.
We'll get to how good a business, overall XAI is. But here, I'm glad you brought this up because in certain ways, Kurt, I feel like Dana is right. Like, this is more realistic as a business than the new physics thing. Like, I have more confidence in this as a path to, like, potential profits than the idea that, like, we're going to put Grok to work solving humanity's biggest problems. It seems like it could actually be, like, a thing for people who are lonely or kind of have, anime kinks or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of thing that, to your point, could actually sell subscriptions, right? Like if this becomes some type of a subscription product for X or built into the X premium thing, that makes actually a lot of sense to me. There's a cliche, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's something about like, the best way to build a business online is to base it around pornography, right? Like that porn is the real underbelly of this entire internet that we all use. And this, I think, sort of plays into an element of that. And so I don't think it's like crazy as a business. Where it stands out to me is that, to Dana's point, like Elon has a long history of telling off-color jokes, silly jokes, sexual jokes. I remember when he took over Twitter, he was, day one, he was like, advertisers, we are a safe space for you. And day two was like, here are 4 masturbation jokes that I just thought of. And it's just like the rub does not always make sense. Like it is too much in conflict. Like he tries to be very serious on one hand, and then he comes out and does things that are very unserious on the other. And to me, that is the issue, more so than like whether this is a good or bad business, whatever. It's just what it reflects, I think, about him and sort of what he's trying to build. In some cases, I think can, push people away or let the real serious things he's doing sort of be undermined by the fact that he's very unserious in a lot of ways.
I mean, part of what makes this funny is this, like, sexy anime talking like an ASMR thing is like wildly expensive. They are just like burning huge amounts of electricity, huge amounts of like GPU capacity to make these things work. And we've talked about this on the podcast a bunch of times, but like XAI is bleeding money. There was a couple weeks back, we talked about the report. They're bleeding maybe $1 billion per month. There has been this fundraising going on. I think we have to understand this launch event and the wild claims about new physics in that context. And to that point, we got a report in the Wall Street Journal, which Bloomberg has also confirmed, that SpaceX is going to be one of the investors in this massive equity round. SpaceX is going to put $2 billion into XAI. Dana, you're always talking about how Elon Musk's sort of empire, they have these separate business, but they really operate as one business. What is the rationale here? Like why does a rocket company want to invest in the AI girlfriend company?
Yeah, well, I think, as Ed Ludlow and I reported, like Elon really wants to have this kind of like vertically integrated AI infrastructure stack. And you can imagine that Grok or some other part of XAI could be the back end customer service for Starlink customers. So say you buy like a Starlink satellite dish and you're in your RV and like the internet speed is low and you want to complain to somebody, like maybe a Grok chatbot like helps you troubleshoot your problem. So like I can see ways that it could all work. Also, I mean, Grok has this incredible computing power, but is it going to need to rely on space-based satellites for some of that? So by investing, SpaceX will have dibs. I mean, at some point, XAI is going to have to grow a real board, I would imagine. Like, they don't really have a board right now. It's Elon and Jared Birchall and maybe one other person.
But why in the world would you need to own $2 billion of SpaceX equity? Like, I understand what you're saying. Like, you could imagine, I think you kind of have to squint, to be frank, but you could imagine some synergies between SpaceX and XAI. But again, does that explain why the investment needs to happen? Beyond just the fact that the CEO is the same guy?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the thing. It's like Elon always like robs Peter to save Paul, right? From all of his other companies. And we saw this in Solar City back in 2016, where like Solar City was struggling. So Tesla acquired them and everyone was like, oh, Tesla is acquiring a solar company. And it's like, no, you guys, like Elon is the chair of the board of Solar City. Like this is a bailout. And so, I mean, the cost of going to Mars is huge. So I think $2 billion is like not... That's like a significant, I think it's SpaceX's largest outside investment. Like, I don't think they've ever invested in another entity quite like this. But then on the other hand, the other thing that's happening is that Tesla is going to invest in XAI, and Musk said he's going to have to bring it to a shareholder vote. But, that'll probably be like $5 billion. That's what he's been floating for over a year now.
Yeah, he brought that up on Twitter. The idea of $5 billion, I think it was last year, right? He did a Twitter poll. And separately, kind of to your point about synergy or apparent synergy or attempted synergy, you can now use Grok inside of your Tesla car or whatever. So I guess you could talk to your AI girlfriend or ask it about physics or whatever. I mean, Kurt, am I wrong to look at these reports about, Elon Musk trying to move money from his more successful companies to his startup, as well as reports from Bloomberg and others about difficulty closing debt rounds, about, what really feels like a scramble to bring money, and say, how is this not like another bailout? Like you have a massive money-losing company, and then you have a guy taking money from another company he controls, and putting it in there. Is that totally off base, or do you think there's an element of that here?
It feels like the world's largest conflict of interest, right? It is exactly as you described, Max. There is the one guy who runs all these things. He's taking money from pocket A into pocket B. And the problem is, I don't see that outside of like retail Tesla investors, it doesn't feel like there's really anybody willing to come and say, hey, should this happen, to push back on Elon. Nobody wants to be cut out from the business of Elon Musk. And so as a result, no one is willing to say, is this the best use of $2 billion or $5 billion? Should you be propping up your AI business with monies from, the private space exploration company? Who wants to raise their hand and complain about that and then be cut out from the next big thing that Elon does? Because investing in Elon Musk historically has been a very good business for venture capitalists who can get in early enough. And I just don't see people willing to call him out on this, because as big as $2 billion is, it's also not huge, right? Like it's big, but it's not so big that you're willing to burn your relationship with Elon over it. And so I think that's what we're seeing here. But it is a conflict of interest. I don't think there's any way to frame it otherwise. Like, could there be things that work about an investment? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that it's not a conflict.
Yeah, I feel like the best case for this is just that the shareholders of all these companies feel like Elon Musk is the most important element of all of these companies, and he wants to do it. And so they're going to say, sure, go ahead. What else are we going to say?
I think that's absolutely right. I think if you boil it down, it's this guy has all the say and the power. Even if he technically doesn't have the voting control, he has the actual power and sway. And, to stand in front of that freight train is not something that people have become willing to do yet.
Okay, Dana, we're going to let you go and get to Kurt's interview. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you next week.
See you soon.
All right, Kurt, stick around. We're going to hear your interview with Teddy Schleifer. I'm sure we'll get to talk all about whether or not Grok is a Nazi, or whether Grok could be your girlfriend, or whether Grok could invent some new physics in the weeks to come.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it. Hey, Teddy, welcome to Elon Inc.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. You have covered Elon in a lot of ways over the last 6 months, but even before that. But I wanted to bring us back because the story I was very jealous of at the time, and I think still sort of stands the test of time, is one that you wrote way back in December of last year. The title is "The Silicon Valley Billionaires Steering Trump's Transition." And there's been so much news between now and then. 6 months ago feels like, 5 years ago. But I think what I loved about this story is that you took the Trump-Musk relationship from the campaign trail and sort of introduced the fact that this thing was going to last into the administration, that it wasn't just going to be Elon, but it was also going to be like all of the people who orbit Elon going into that administration as well. I think it was like a perfect table setter for ultimately what we ended up experiencing, for those first 3, 4, 5 months of the administration. So walk me through, like, how does a story like this come together? You're on the byline with some, powerhouse journalists at the Times, Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. How does this, materialize for you? Like, how did you start to kind of get a sense that Elon was going to be much larger than just a campaign donor to President Trump?
Sure. So as of mid-December, it was public, or had been well reported, that Elon Musk was at Mar-a-Lago since Election Day, a month prior. What was not well known was the fact that Musk had kind of brought in 10 to 20 of his homies to basically quasi-run the transition alongside him. Musk technically didn't have any role in the presidential transition. It was run by Howard Lutnick and Linda McMahon, two people that Trump has known for a long time, and they both kind of divided up the transition into certain areas of responsibility dating back to, I think, August. Then Trump's elected in November. Elon flies to Mar-a-Lago for the election night party and then never leaves. And so what happened in November and December is there's kind of the official transition process being run by the people who are ahead of the transition. And then these other people, and the reason it was an interesting story to us is because the other people were never announced. It was never announced that Sean McGuire or Mark Andreessen or kind of Musk's personal family office aides were running this alongside them. And the way we heard about it should be rather obvious, is that people were going in for these meetings at Mar-a-Lago to be, Secretary of State or Deputy Secretary of State or whatever, and were, they weren't like surprised to walk into the room and see people they didn't expect, but they kind of were. Like they were showing up and were surprised by the extent to which they had to deal with these kind of unofficial, DOGE or quasi-DOGE representatives who had no public billing and sometimes no public profile. Like I even learned names of people that I had never heard of doing this story because suddenly they were, interviewing the next head of the Pentagon, even though you Google them and you have no idea who they were.
Yeah, and you start with this awesome scene of Trump sort of sitting around with a lot of his advisors, and I'm going to quote from the story, but he says, Larry Ellison is there, the co-founder of Oracle, chairman of Oracle. Elon Musk is there. And he says, I brought the 2 richest people in the world today. What did you bring? I love that because it speaks to sort of Trump, what he values a little bit, right? He values that wealth, that power, but he also loves to flaunt that he knows these guys and that he can get them to show up on his behalf. How did you view the relationship between the richest man in the world, Elon Musk, and the most powerful man in the world, Donald Trump? Because they're two alphas who I think a lot of people thought this will never even get off the ground. And yet it obviously has, it's had a lot of speed bumps, which we can get to, but I think it worked better for a lot longer than a lot of people would have thought.
Sure. I mean, for a long time, it was like a contrarian opinion to think that this was going to last at all. The betting markets were so weighted toward the idea that this was going to collapse imminently. Yeah, I mean, Trump clearly enjoyed having Elon around until it all blew up. I do not think that there was some secret hatred from Trump toward Musk. From Trump advisors I've talked to, like the sense I got was that he found Musk's jokes a little weird. And, they're obviously very different kind of sensibilities and different industries. But Trump liked having the adulation and yes-manness of Musk around him. Elon certainly got away with a lot of things that would never be tolerated from any other advisor. Like around this same time of this story, we had, Elon Musk publicly supporting candidates for like Treasury Secretary in a way that would never be true if like Susie Wiles just decided to tweet her opinions about who should be, getting these jobs. Trump liked the richness of kind of the guy around him, and he liked the wealth of Larry Ellison, and he kind of is impressed with himself to some extent that he can get these people to spend time at his club and suck up to him.
Yeah. I like the story again because it sets the table for what was to come. At what point did you realize, okay, Elon is not just sort of bankrolling this guy's campaign, he's actually going to have a meaningful role in this administration? I imagine at this point in early December, as you're writing the story, that has become obvious to you. Were you surprised by that? Did you already sort of know that going into this story, or was this story the moment where you're like, oh my God, like this is taking on perhaps another level that people didn't quite appreciate?
No, I mean, I was surprised for sure. I remember Maggie and I did a story on election day that Musk was going to be attending the election night party at Mar-a-Lago. I remember us being kind of on the fence privately about like whether or not this was even a story. It's like, well, like, who cares if he's showing up at the party? But as I mentioned earlier, he never left after the party, or I think he left once very briefly, right? He basically, that was the beginning of this role of this kind of next chapter in the story where he went from just being, a big mega donor to actually, almost running parts of the federal government on Trump's behalf. So that was surprising even, I think it was even surprising in December. I think, honestly, it was even surprising until after December. Like, I mean, the fact that we knew that Musk was going to be leading DOGE, but a lot of the people mentioned in the story have played roles in the federal government even after January 20th. I feel like, honestly, I'm still surprised, even as we're recording this, that, these people are sticking around to some extent. And you have David Sachs and Joe Gebbia and all these kind of Elon friends who are in these very senior roles. It was not foreseen that this would happen. The fact that Elon Musk ended up taking, he probably won't admit this, but he basically took months off of his own companies, basically full time, to be leading this kind of nascent effort inside the public sector. That was not foreseen. I don't think it was even foreseen in December.
Yeah. I think you have a unique perspective because your job is to cover billionaires, right? I cover Elon sort of through the lens often of X or was known as Twitter, but you cover people like him at all different industries and walks of life and things. I get the sense from my experience, he's different than anybody else I've ever covered. How does he sort of compare to you? Like, is a lot of the stuff he does common among billionaires and maybe we just don't always see that? Or is he truly this sort of like unicorn guy to write about and cover?
It's a good question. I mean, to some extent, he is doing everything that everyone else is doing, just more of it, right? He exemplifies and exaggerates the trends we see of other people. Kurt, you've written about this a little bit, like to the extent to which he is become like a person of envy for other tech billionaires in the months since, right? Where you have people like Zuckerberg or Sam Altman, even enemies of Musk, who like have seen what he's been able to do in the public sector and with his public profile and thought to themselves like, damn, I should do the same thing. I mean, so I think he's always been one of one, though I'm amazed even now, and it's not like I've covered him for 20 years. I've covered him for like 5, but I'm amazed still by like the gravitational pull that he has, where you have all of these like friends and investors and, people who are just in his social circle who like, and this is not a charitable way to put it, but like seem to have their entire life dedicated to like serving him. Like that would never be true of like any other like portfolio company founder for some of these VCs, right? Where their entire energy and life's purpose seems to be revolving around him. And to some extent, it's easy to make fun of it, but I guess it works, right? Like where you suddenly get access to XAI because you are like helping Elon with his super PAC, and then XAI ends up really valuable. And, these things kind of create this like gravity, and there's a circularness to revolving around Musk that I do think is very unique, where maybe people say the same things about like Peter Thiel to some extent, but like I do feel like it's unique to Musk that every single person who knows him like sees profit and access and power out of just continuing to be around him, which then itself creates that power and money that they've been seeking in the first place.
Well, the same names keep showing up everywhere he goes, right? You see like Jared Birchall and Steve Davis and, certainly his lawyer, Alex Spiro. And like some of that is just like, if you're his lawyer, yes, you're going to, you're going to show up where he gets into legal hot water, which appears to be everywhere with him. But you do see, to your point, like the orbit moves with him. It's not as if these people, stay put and he parachutes in. It's like it all moves as a team. I'm wondering what he's like to report on. He sort of famously doesn't have PR people, or at least not a lot. He doesn't have a PR machine in the way that a lot of other billionaires do. I have found that people closest to him, incredibly loyal, therefore hard to get to. They can be aggressive or to push back on stories. Like, just what's he like to cover compared to other billionaires in that regard? Is he harder to get access to his world because he's so big? Is it easier? Like, what's your experience been?
Sure. I mean, I've found his circle to be definitely loyal, and maybe I'm being too soft. I haven't had any like great public blowups with any of them behind the scenes. I try to take him at like face value, I think maybe more than other reporters do. I feel I'm helped in part by not having baggage. Like, I feel like this is kind of my approach with some tech billionaires. I just feel like I'm just trying to write about them in the current context, which I think helps. The one thing I think is unique about Musk, and I know you've thought about this too, is like behind the scenes, there's not a lot there that's not public.
Yeah.
I think there are things that Musk keeps secret tactically that like, people should report and scoop and go for it. But like, there's some different texture that he says privately, but I feel like if I were on some of these group chats, like as Musk talks about like the budget bill in Congress, like he's saying the same things privately that he's saying publicly. I have yet to find like a super interesting storyline about what Elon is saying privately behind the scenes.
Yeah. Other than, all the children that we maybe don't, the unknown children that we don't know about. Yeah, but he kind of
talks about that publicly too. I mean, he doesn't talk about it in detail, but like the fact that like he discloses so much voluntarily.
Yeah, he really does.
And like replies to random people in a way that neuters some of the journalism about him.
Yeah, and it is a very competitive beat, obviously, as well. I want to move forward a little bit to the Trump-Musk relationship. In general, it has been rocky. They obviously have already had a relatively big public spat in, I guess it was the beginning of June. What do you make of that? Like, is this truly the, that they're never going to work together again? They're sort of gone their separate ways? Or do you envision that at some point maybe these two are going to be rekindled? Like, I guess I'm just curious what you think of that relationship today compared to when you wrote this story 6 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like to some extent surprising it didn't happen earlier and people kept expecting this to happen. I think the reasons it happened are pretty interesting. I mean, it is, from talking to people around him, like Musk definitely has legitimate or deeply felt beliefs about the budget bill that, has caused such a rupture between him and Trump. But the real story is that he feels kind of embarrassed by a number of things that concluded his tenure, including, the ouster of a Musk friend to be the head of NASA, Jared Isaacman. Like, he feels what he feels about the budget bill, but the reason he's being so public about it has to do with a lot of other things. And that's the quote unquote real story. I also concede that, like, I think there's still things we're trying to learn right now about the real story. But the fact that it blew up was less interesting to me than sort of like the why. And also the how, like, I think like the fact that, like, during that day when he was tweeting about Jeffrey Epstein, like, he clearly is just like vibing. I have not detected any serious moves that Musk is making behind the scenes to actually form a third party. I have not detected any serious moves he's making to launch primary challengers against Republicans, as he's threatening to do, at least as of this recording. So he is a guy with a phone, like we all are, Kurt. We're all just guys with phones. And he is tapping out messages and sending it to his 220 million followers, and then bada bing, bada bang, gets on the internet, right? I mean, it's sort of as simple as that. I think what's unique about him is he has so much power, and that also he seems to have no guardrails. So he can do whatever he wants, and he is.
Yeah, I mean, that's been his strategy and style for years now, right? So it's not really surprising. I think it is perhaps unsettling to some people because it's happening at such a stage and a scale now. When he did this stuff, when he would just sort of, to your point, be a guy with a phone at Tesla 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was like, okay, he's harming himself and one company. Now the sort of implications of guy with phone, I think, are just at a larger scale than perhaps they've ever been.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any sense that Elon himself might ever get into politics, or is there no value in him being the politician when he can simply sort of puppet master from the private sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most interesting things I've reported in the last couple of months, which we just stuck in the middle of a story and never really highlighted until now, was like the legacy of the Wisconsin race and sort of shaping Musk's psyche. So, as people may remember, in April, Musk, spent about $25 to $30 million on this Supreme Court race in the state of Wisconsin. Elon seemed to go out of his way to make himself the public face of that campaign. He did a big rally the night before, starring himself. Trump advisors stayed away from the race. Trump did not go to Wisconsin. The guy loses, and Musk basically, tugs his tail and never speaks of the race ever again. But in private conversations, Elon has indicated that he knows that he sort of made a mistake making himself the public figure of that campaign, or at least that's the takeaway of people who have talked to him. And so, yes, I think that race kind of shaped his view of his own powers, and I do not think Elon Musk will actually ever enter politics himself, in part because he seems more like self-aware of his divisiveness. Famous last words on that probably, but I do not get the sense that he will ever do anything more serious. And, I certainly, at least as of this summer, I'm wondering what he has in plans for the next couple of years, because it's such a topsy-turvy. Like, if you just listen to what he says publicly, like, he contradicts himself all the time. Like, we're at the time of this recording, a month ago, he said he's going to spend a lot less money on politics. And then, suddenly he's saying a couple weeks later, quote, I'm going to primary every Republican member of Congress. So you can't take everything he's saying too seriously.
Right. Last prediction here, if you're comfortable. We'll say, a year from when you wrote this story, I think it was December 6th of last year. So let's go December 6th of 2025, fast forward 6 months or so from now. Are we going to see Musk involved in politics still? Is he going to be completely back into SpaceX, XAI, Tesla, or is he still going to be doing that? As he said when he was going to leave, I'll be there, 2 days a week or 2-3 days a week, whatever he said. Is there any world in which we're still talking about him as a political figure in 6 months, or are we back to Musk the innovator?
I'll predict that he is not that involved at all. I think he will ultimately not be a big part of the 2026 midterms. He might support, Thomas Massie or someone like that, who, the one House Republican or two House Republicans that have opposed the budget bill. I do not think he will spend a significant amount of time on DOGE-related efforts. I don't even know if DOGE is even going to even really exist. I mean, it's already sort of been somewhat more embattled since Musk left. I could see, Musk getting involved in the 2028 presidential campaign. It's going to be an open Republican primary. Musk feels like he swung the election for Trump, even though that claim remains entirely unverified, even though the myth has taken hold that, Musk won Trump Pennsylvania, even though no one's ever systematically assessed that question. But I could see him feeling compelled to get involved in the presidential race because maybe he can kind of recreate the magic. But I'll predict that ultimately he will be not that involved in public and political life. Though he does appear extraordinarily sensitive to this perception, I found pretty interesting, Kurt. He's always now that he's withdrawing from DOGE and political giving, he wants us to know a little bit too much.
Yeah. Well, we're prepared to hold this prediction above your head for the next 6 months and, constantly bring it up to let you know how you did. So
I predicted on a Puck podcast in mid-2024 that Elon Musk would not get involved with the election.
Okay. Well, you have a great track record then. We'll hold that against you. Teddy, we really value your journalism and your reporting, and thank you for coming on to make our listeners smarter. So thank you.
You bet.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong and edited by Anna Mazarakis. Blake Maples handles engineering and Dave Purcell fact-checks. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Seguiera. Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. Big thanks to our supporters, Joel Weber and Brad Stone. I'm Max Chafkin. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us, and we'll see you next week.